So, ladies and gentlemen, it's not too often a major rock band or rock country band gets formed because a beautiful woman says, "Do you want to join my band?" So, on Behind the Tracks today, we're going to be talking about how the Eagles got together in the early 1970s. Now, the Eagles had their origin in early 71 when Linda Ronstadt and her manager John Boylan recruited musicians Glenn Frey and Don Henley for her band. Henley had moved to LA from Texas with his band Shiloh to record an album produced by Kenny Rogers, and Frey had come from Michigan and former Long Branch Penny Wessel. The two then met in 1970 at the Troubadour in LA and became acquainted through their mutual record label, Amos Records. Randy Meisner, who had been working with Ricky Nelson's backing band, yes, that Ricky Nelson, the Stone Canyon Band, and Burley Leedon, a veteran of Flying Burrito Brothers, also later joined Ronstadt's group of performers for a summer tour promoting the Silk Purse album. Now, while on tour with Linda, Frey and Henley decided to form a band together and informed Ronstadt of their intention. Frey later credited Ronstadt, which suggested Leedon for the band and arranging for Leedon to play first so Frey and Henley could approach him about forming a band together. He also pitched the idea to Meisner and brought him on board. These four played live together behind Ronstadt only once for a July concert at, of all places, Disneyland, but all four appeared on her self-titled album. It was later proposed that J.D. Souther should join the band, but for some reason Meisner objected. The four was signed in September 71 to Asylum Records, the new label started by future Cher straight boyfriend David Geffen, who was introduced to Frey by Jackson Browne. Geffen brought out Frey and Henley's contract with Amos Records and sent the four to Aspen to develop as a band. Having not settled on a band name yet, they formed their first show in October 71 under the name of Teen King and the Emergencies at a club called The Gallery in Aspen. Now, the idea of naming the band the Eagles came during a peyote and tequila influenced group outing in the Mojave Desert. However, accounts of the origin of the name vary. Don Felder, who had yet to join the Eagles and was not at the desert, credited Leedon with originating the name when he recalled reading about the Hopus reference for the eagle, while Souther suggested that the idea came from Frey shouted out "Eagles" when he saw eagles fly above. Steve Martin, the comedian, a friend of the band from the early days of the Troubadour, recounts in his autobiography that he suggested that it should be referred to as the Eagles, but Frey insisted the group's name is simply Eagles. Geffen and partner Elliot Roberts initially managed the band, yes, his husband, and they were later replaced by Irving Azoff while the Eagles were recording their first album. Now, the group's self-titled debut album was recorded in England in February 72 with producer Glyn Johns. Johns was impressed by the harmony singing of the band and has been credited with shaping the band into the country rock band with those high-flying harmonies. Of course, Michael Nesmith did a little bit of that, John Fogerty on some of his work. Now, released on June 1st, 72, Eagles was a breakthrough success, yielding 3 top 40 singles. The first single, lead track Take It Easy, was a song written by Frey with his neighbor and fellow country folk rocker Jackson Browne. Browne had written the first verse of the song, but got stalled in the second verse after the line, "I'm standing on the corner of Winslow, Arizona." Frey completed the verse, and Browne carried on to finish the song. The song reached number 12 in the Billboard Hot 100 and was followed by the bluesy and somewhat satanic Witchy Woman and a soft country rock ballad Peaceful Easy Feeling, charting at number 9 and number 22 respectively. The group was one of the support acts for Yes on their Close to the Edge tour. Now, not to sound kind of bizarre, Yes at the time well, it was a very, very strong progressive rock act. Now, that tour was quite interesting because it ran from 30th of July 72 to April 73. It began in Dallas and ended at the West Palm Beach Auditorium in West Palm Beach, Florida. The tour, again, was Alan White's first with the band. Now, recordings from the tour, both film and audio, were included on the band's 73 live album, Yes Songs. The film performance was recorded at the December 72 shows at the London Rainbow Theatre. Now, at the time, Yes was very big with what they called the cerebral or the college group, and they were very big in Canada. So for the Eagles to tour, the Eagles were doing press and radio and stuff like that. Now, 11 songs, again, from the tour eventually became a big part of the Yes. Now, the tour, again, 97 concerts in the States, Canada, UK, Japan, and Australia over 7 legs. 3 North American legs, 2 European legs, an Asian leg, and an Australasian leg. Support came from the Eagles, Gentle Giant, Edgar Winter and the group, Linz Farn, a Mayashuna Orchestra, Gary Wright, the Jay Giles Band, Wild Turkey, Badger, and Focus. And the set list was pretty well established there. Now, just the Eagles' early tours, this is some of the dates. I would figure Vancouver was on that tour as well. I think that was the only stop. Then he did Waterloo, Toronto, Ottawa, and Montreal in October of November 72. And after a tour of Japan, he came back to the States. Now, they did have several canceled shows for obvious reasons, including an Acapulco one that should have been May 1st. So, ladies and gentlemen, like I said, this, like the original formation of the Eagles, they were doing like heavy on it, but they were practice musicians, and I don't even think that the Eagles were the main draw at these concerts, because Jay Giles and Edgar Winter group, and this was, like I said, a start for them. And I think it had to do with the fact that Yes was an established act. You knew there was going to be a lot of people that were going to be coming out for that. Now, the first hit of the Eagles, again, we talked about that in previous podcasts. Take It Easy. The band became noted as a harmony singing country rock band in the early years. That's established for this, of course, into Desperado. In this one, Frey sings lead vocals and Meisner and harmonies, with the rest of the band joining in later. Now, just some rough stats. When they formed in LA in 71, they had 5 number 1 singles, 6 number 1 albums, 6 Grammys, and 5 AMAs. Internationally, they sold 200 million records, with a big 100 million in the States. Now, inducted in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 98, number 75 on a Rolling Stones 100 Greatest Artists of All Time. Founding members, Frey, Henley, Leiden, and Meisner. Again, David Geffen gave him the big go. Now, again, the Eagles album, 2 top 20 singles in the U.S. and Canada, Take It Easy and Witchy Woman. And we're going to talk very quickly about the Witchy Woman later on, but the chart success with that, this was bigger. At the time, the Eagles were bigger in Canada than they were in the States. I'll give you an example. It was top 8, Witchy Woman in 72, and Billboard Hot 100. It was number 9. And they were big in the Netherlands as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you can remember back to a time there was no Eagles, they kind of created, other than Nesmith and John Fogerty, a few others, that country rock and pop. And Kenny Rogers, I mean, he's a cousin of that too. But the fact is, the early Eagles, if you ever saw them in the Yes Tour, if anybody, Canadian fans of the Eagles, that maybe knew people that went to the tour when they were backing up Yes, let me know. I think at the Toronto one, they were there. I'm pretty well sure of it, because there was some talk on the local media. I think it was either City TV or one of the independent channels, because they're all very handsome too. That drew a lot of women. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you like what you're doing with our Eagles podcast as a part of Behind the Tracks, let us know with a like, comment, subscribe, or share. And don't forget, next week, it could be a lot of sports with the Montreal Canadiens in the playoffs or the next few days. So the goals to the form will be rising. So I know it's weird to bring it up. So we're going to be doing some Montreal Canadiens history. Might go under the column name Follow the Torch. Be those that hold it high. I haven't decided. I might just call it Goals to the Form. Talking about some playoff history. So, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for listening. And don't forget, get a peaceful, easy feeling past the joint. Have a good one. And don't forget, if you got a bottle of liquor and you had a pit party this summer, pass the bottle. That's the Canadian way. Have a good one. Bye.